Hey, Tolerators, it's me, Natalie, with your before show updates on all things Team Tolerator. So, we are sitting on the January, February, March side of life. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like the misogyny meltdown over on Patreon is well underway. That is a new series and show that I am producing for Patreon members only because there is a lot of scripting and a lot of vulnerability going on. I've already sang a song, I've already produced a skit, I'm already writing comedy. So go take a chance on the misogyny meltdown and the way that To All the Men I've Tolerated Before is expanding and evolving with the link in the show notes. For January, we celebrated the Misogynist of the Year award ceremony. For February, we are focusing on the concept of love and self love being part of the resistance. And in March, why, yes, we're still going to do seasonal things with celebrating International Women's Month. And all of that will be wrapped up into our new variety show, Misogyny Meltdown. I cannot wait for you to check it out. Hey, Tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, we are joined by Jen Cooper, creator of Jennifer Magazine. Jennifer Magazine is a publication that is supporting a strong community of women and non-binary people who are challenging the status quo of ageism, choosing conscious consumption over status seeking, supporting brands that align with their values of inclusion, stepping into the empowerment found in self-expression, and talking about it. So if you have not noticed, the overlapping is ending misogyny, saying fuck you to capitalism, and that's why Jen's here.
Well, it's so funny. You're reading all that. I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of writing. Like, I was like, we need to just condense it to exactly what you said.
End misogyny, fuck capitalism. We get to be here.
Yeah, right? Right. Well, thank you.
No problem. No, thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the work that you do, and welcome to Team Tolerator.
I'm excited to be here.
Let's launch in. Can you give us some background on your career in journalism?
Yeah, I can. And it's really interesting because I don't have a background in journalism. So I'm going to tell you that was very quick. That was a very quick answer. I have worked with journalists before, like former journalists. Yeah, my background's a little, I would say it's all over the place, but to me, it's not. I've lived a bit of time now. I've had a couple different careers, which I feel is all of them have layered onto where I am at now. So my background, I went to school for psychology. I really believe and know that we learn by watching each other, which is why it's so great that you're doing this podcast, because we need to see other people doing things so that we feel safe, and then also so that we learn, right? Then I kind of got into blogging. I was one of the first wave mommy bloggers, although I said family bloggers because mine was actually educational. It was like an educational site because I had worked with kids. So, and then my kids grew up and I was like, this is not a good job anymore. They didn't want to be online. I didn't want to be talking about them all the time. The undercurrent through all of this has always been writing and self-expression, creativity, and all of that. And so I started blogging. I started copywriting. I had worked in communications departments, just a lot of different types of writing. And I realized I didn't want to write alone, and it is more fun to do with other people. And, I already know everything that's in my head, so I don't need to hear it anymore. So I wanted these multiple voices. And I just thought about how so many of us are coming of age, like our midlife crisis, at a time when everything is falling apart. I mean, we have a global pandemic. We have, political upheaval. We have international destruction. And so, and also global, warming and change and all of that. And I was like, wow, this really sucks. We should probably talk about it. So that's kind of how Jennifer came to be. It's like all of those things that, especially for those of us who grew up, my generation was the first one to have a foothold in kind of these two eras where it's the old way of doing things, analog, phones on walls. You watch the news for like a couple minutes in the evening or maybe in the morning, to where we're at now. And so it really felt like this movement to undo a lot of the learning that we had been doing, and then kind of how this new era is here. What do we do with it? What are we going to carry forward? How are we going to change it? What's going to be better?
Thank you for your compliment about the podcast and why it's important. I agree with you. I think we've been sold this story that writing, creating content, all of this should be like your solo tormented endeavor. I did exactly one solo episode on our Patreon that I thought was always going to just be me talking about my month, misogyny, I've noticed, whatever. And I recorded it once and I went, I hate this. Why would I ever just talk to myself?
Yeah. I mean, some people love it. I just am not built that way. I'm built for, I am an introvert, but I'm built for so I can't do like a big crowd, but I can do like, this is perfect. Right. So we're bouncing ideas. I'm learning and it's just way more fun. Yeah. I feel like ideas get shaped once they're out of my head. Like they've already gone through this thing in my head. And then once they're out into the world is where the real test is.
And I think building community is something that during all of this upheaval, we were kind of told like, no, it's not worth it anymore. Like things are too polarizing. We shouldn't be having discussions. It's rude to be talking about all of this in public. It's making people uncomfortable. So for you to be rushing against that, to be like, no, we're going to bring people together and we're going to write things from our heart and we're going to notice this world around us and actually condense it into what we actually feel and believe about it. That's so important.
You're talking about that and, all of those things about staying small, don't upset, don't rock the boat. All of those things are the things that were bred, or I don't want to say bred. All of those things were the things that were like taught, hammered into us so that we didn't disrupt the status quo. And who did the status quo serve? So yeah, I mean, and it just, you see a lot of people, I think, who didn't benefit from all of the online stuff, to be honest with you. I mean, it's as terrible as it is at times. Awful, awful, awful. There are things where we get to connect with others and we're like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Or, oh, I'm listening, I'm learning. And so I think that it really between my mom's generation and my generation, huge differences. And between my generation and my daughter's generations, I mean, God, the gulf between what they know and what I do, it's amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm always yes, the internet is scary and you have to be careful. But I'm also a big proponent of, especially because I live in the Midwest and I was like, the internet is the only way I can find people who like the things that I like, or safe queer spaces, or safe spaces for women to actually vent about what's going on in their lives. And TikTok has become, my greatest vice. And when they were going to Congress or doing something in the government to try and block TikTok from all of our phones, I told people, you realize it's purposeful. And they're like, well, they just want to make sure that our data's safe. I go, our data's never been safe. They've always had it. They can weaponize it against us whenever they want. And it's purposeful. They want to make sure that we can't have this very volatile, chaotic app where I can get on and talk about being straight harassed. and someone else can get on and talk about how voting laws don't make sense for a good portion of our communities and voter suppression. And then people are aware of women being underdiagnosed in autism, and passing this information along and continuously talking to people from different backgrounds and cultures and all of it. I go, they hate that. They don't want that.
Yeah. You don't want other people to know. I was just thinking about this today. It's like, when we whitewash history, right? Like it's purposeful through the system, right? Because then you're not like trying to change things. You're just keeping it like, oh no, white people did all the good things, and then not doing the deep dive to see that that's not a universal truth. It's very much the opposite most of the time. So, and if you were to go around knowing all of that, which, I think the whole, the uprisings of 2020 really shed a huge light on it, like, holy, bleep. Like, yes, I see it so much more clearly now.
Yeah. So when you were conceptualizing
Mm-hmm.
the mission statement for Jennifer Magazine and coming up with your plans, what was important to you? Like when you sat down and you were like, this is how it has to be. Because this podcast was just supposed to be me bitching about my exes until that got boring.
You can only go so far with that. You could have turned this into like a Taylor Swift thing. She's like amazing at that. She's really monetized that.
I know, if only I had the vocabulary of one Taylor Swift. I read her lyrics a lot while I'm singing along, and I'm like, how did she expect me to say Machiavellian on beat in the middle of this long, beautiful phrase where she's being sarcastic and sassy?
Right. Jennifer was born during 2020, during the pandemic. It was really a place where I just needed a place. I needed a place. And it was always my intention, being one of these, writers who was in the room with very patriarchal standards, or sometimes being the only woman in the room, because that's happened to me a couple, times. And then just the gatekeeping that's typically done, just really bugged me. So the intention was always to bring other voices into the mix, specifically those voices that don't have a platform. As like, I can build a website. I have all the skills. I can do this. And if that's what I can offer so that it can elevate, and provide opportunity, that's really important to me, because that's the world I want to live in. So Jennifer is basically one of the aspects of the world I want to build, which is where there are multiple voices, where we're not doing things the same way. We are disrupting the status quo by the very fact, by not being always polite, right? Not sugarcoating things. Some of our articles are very progressive. I always say that I don't really think of them as political, or progressive. I think of them as just naturally moving forward, forward momentum. And so that was I always had this idea of a collective. So the magazine is named Jennifer because that's my name, but it's also representative of an era. So between the I think it's like 68, 69, I can't remember the exact date, up until the 80s, through the 80s. Jennifer was the most popular name in the country. There are more, and it was the longest era of a name, so there are a lot of us out there. And I just thought about all of the different experiences somebody can have, a woman can have, yet we still all have this name. So for me, that was, really building this platform. And I think too, having two adult daughters, one of them being transgender, it really hit differently for me. Like, it really made me realize the importance of having something that's outside of that cis het white woman gaze, which is mine, right? And I'm not, like that is who I am. I own it. But that's not the only, the only voice that's important here. So, for me, I just really wanted to bring people together and to provide opportunity. It's so hard out there. We talked about, this whole idea of being like a poor writer or being, a starving artist. I have no interest in that.
I have I am currently living that life, but I have no interest in it. We recorded, it's now February, but we time travel onto All the Men I've Tolerated Before. We recorded an episode this year because I got myself together and got a couple of my friends down, and I was like, no, we're going to talk about Final Girls and the girls in the horror movies. And my friend Elizabeth said, she goes, Final Girls throw out every convention that a woman has been taught about what it means to endure and survive, and they throw it out the window. And I wrote like a love letter to them on our blog about how, it's through the horror genre and the thriller genre that I've learned, and art and writing, that I've learned it's okay to be messy. It's okay to stop being subtle.
Yes. So this is okay. Yes, exactly. Like, we can be complicated. We can be messy. We can say the wrong thing. And that whole thing of living under the anvil, the weight of perfection, that stops us from doing and exploring and offering our viewpoint. And so, one of the other things too is there are a lot of other women too who kind of uphold misogyny, patriarchy. I happen to be in the vicinity of many of them. You talk about living in the Midwest, and I didn't feel like I was fitting in with my community here. I was the one who was kicked out of book clubs. I was the one who would, start fights being like, I don't think that's accurate, like about, just sensitive topics and, being very challenging if I heard something that was really, awful. And so, I wasn't connecting. And so I guess I needed to also find those others who were like me. And I just thought about all these little dots across the map, who are like, oh, wait, there are other people out there like me who think like me or who want the same things,
Oh, yeah. We have an entire episode about women upholding misogyny because it was really rough this summer. This whole decentering the patriarchy and men and a lot of other things come with decentering men. Then all of a sudden you're like, I want to decenter white people now, even though I am one. I want to decenter straightness. I want to decenter neurotypical. I want to stop looking at a person and making assumptions based off of what makes me comfortable, because honestly, so little makes me comfortable. So why? And to watch, it's very hard to feel part of a community when you're the person holding the mirror to the community to be like, it won't get better until you join forces with me.
Yeah.
You keep telling me that you agree with me, so don't bring men into my house who don't deserve to be in my house. Vote in a way that shows that you agree with me. Uphold a woman of color today. Uphold a trans woman today. Read a book about the trans experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I talk about, I just want to be clear too, when I talk about women, I'm talking about trans women. I'm talking about non-binary people who were socialized as women. So they have that experience. I don't know what it's like to be non-binary, so I'm not going to hit every, I'm not going to hit it right, but, those, I want to make sure that we are hearing those voices. And, before my kid came out, it was like, oh, she teases. She's like, we're a lived up house. Oh, and, it's like, I don't know about that, but anyway, but yeah, we were like definitely progressively minded, liberal, whatever, I'm not a political expert, so I don't know like exactly where we fit, but when she came out, it hit so differently, right? So like it wasn't conceptual anymore. It was it's go time. Like this, we cannot do it anymore. We can't live this way anymore. So, and I think also it really taught me to really examine what it is to be a woman. I mean, I had one cis daughter and one trans daughter, and I did probably parent them differently, even though I didn't think I did. So just exploring all of that. And you're right. Like, yeah, I mean, listen and read a book.
Read a book. Listen to a podcast. If you don't know who Allie Beardsley is, it's because you tune out when I start talking about Dimension 20. Allie Beardsley is a trans person who works for Dropout TV. They have their own podcast called Gender Spiral, and I make a point to listen every week because I respect Allie so much as a comedian that I want to know. I'm going to listen to Allie's podcast because Allie is a fucking badass. And I want to know more about hell when a person who was openly in the queer community and I, a person who did not know that I was a member of the queer community, although people had speculated, we're talking one day and we were like, do you know what pansexuality is? And we were like, no. I go, how about demi? We know what that is? Absolutely not. And so we got on Amazon and we read a book about gender and sexuality, and it helped me give language to people who do not believe that that just believe that these are all choices that people are making for attention and things.
Right.
And I was like, why don't you just decenter gender and view people as people and realize that we all express each other. We all express ourselves in a million ways. And there's a lot of things that have to do with my physical sex as female about my life. But there are a lot of things about my physical sex of female that I set down for a good majority of the day. There are a lot of ways that I express myself as female. If I to think of gender expression.
Yeah. I mean, I always have, during the winter months, I always like have this hibernation. I think most people do, but mine lasts through May. Like it just is, and it's hard for me. Like it's hard for me to do things. So, and I think that, talking about feminine cycles and everything, and I'm not talking about menstruation. I'm talking about just the cycle of, being in touch with nature, and that's so weird to think of that as like a feminine aspect because I don't know, but somehow in modern times it has become that. So
I have a membership to the Cincinnati Zoo. What up, Hippo Fiona, my queen. And every time I'm there, even though I am with people who enjoy the zoo, I have to say out loud, I need us all to be on board with zoos being very important. I go because a lot of people only see, and I learned this while I was teaching, a lot of people only see animals on TV. So when I take kids to the farm, I stopped laughing at them because they were so freaked out that the animals would twitch or smell or make a noise. And I would just look at them and be like, what do you expect that goat to do today? Because you're loud. And I was like, but they had probably only seen a goat on TV. I go, if we need people to care about our earth or the hippos or lions or the animals on our planet or the other people in our planet, we have to actually immerse ourselves in their experience and view them as true. And you only do that by spending time with them.
Yeah. It's not to equate us with animals, but I mean, we are animals. But again, bringing that back to, we have to see things to learn, right? We have to experience things to learn. We have to hear things to learn. And yeah, which is why, if I can bring this back to why women's media is so important, right? Women-centered media and women creating media is so important. Yeah.
Yeah, because you always know, oh my gosh, I'm in a book club Last year, we wanted to do spooky books for spooky season, which I am all about. Witches of Eastwick gets voted for. And I was like, whatever. I love that movie with Cher. What up, Susan Sarandon and Michelle Pfeiffer? It's the hottest movie you could ever watch. I read, it was on my Kindle. I got to 3% of that book. And I was like, no. The way that John Updike would write about the female experience and the female body and what women must be thinking in their heads and the allure and the seduction and all of the manipulated ways that we cast our spells to make men be our prey. And I was like, no, I will not be reading this today. You let me know when someone who was not a man rewrote this. You let me know.
So can you tell, like, because I can usually tell as soon as I start reading something, I'm like, oh yeah, no, a man wrote this.
The only time, probably not the only time, but the only time I can think of it catching me off guard is I went and saw Crazy Rich Asians, and it was so opulent and beautiful and gorgeous that I immediately went feminine. A woman is the only person who could appreciate this beauty. And then I downloaded the audiobook and I was like, this book was written by a man. I guess I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true too, right? But, yeah, because, sometimes I always think, or sometimes I think like I have been married to my husband, and I've been with him since, 1992. And so, we've really grown together. And sometimes when I hear this stuff, I'm like, yeah, but not him. You know what I mean? So in the men in my life, I think that's really important to talk about, or just to acknowledge. We don't have to talk about it. But we need to acknowledge that the men in my life are very supportive. They're very, feminist. And it's when I am with other people who are not men or women, I'm like, wow, this is such a different way of being. Like, I don't understand it. Why are we competing with one another? Why are we all going to the right pool or the right, school, or the, following this very prescriptive and yet all of you hate it paradigm? Like, do this, then this, then this, and yet you all hate it. Why are we continuing to do it?
Well, and unfortunately, like sometimes my very beliefs, like we went through a period during the pandemic where being a witch was trendy. And I was like, so now everyone's interested in my rocks and my cards. I was like, but I was a weirdo for buying these cards. But feminism also became like trendy. And then it became a term because, capitalistic Barbie and, feminism all the way. Taylor Swift selling us the same album in 18 different shades of purple because she knows we'll buy it. And that's on us, honestly.
You read her lyrics.
I read her lyrics. I know exactly what she's doing. She's a mastermind. That Mastermind song, when she said, no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since to make them love me and make it seem effortless. I was like, I've never heard it put into words. How I can feel like I'm so popular, and yet I'm like, yeah, because I'm a mastermind and I made you believe that I was popular. I was like, but then Taylor did it for me, and now I will just go lay down and cry. There's a lot of just laying down and listening to the all too well 10-minute version in this house. I think a lot of the time, well, first let's go back to feminism being trendy. So unfortunately, I have also been able to tell the difference between your husband and boyfriend being an ally and a feminist and a person who understands our experiences and has empathy for it, and someone who has trained themselves to mask that because they don't want to get yelled at in the middle of whatever social situation we're doing.
Right. Yeah.
And no one likes it when I'm like, but they're faking it. They are faking it to keep you around.
Yeah. I feel like I can smell bullshit pretty easily. And yeah, there are things where, there are certain tropes that like husbands, wives, or like guys are like, was it the wife is happy, everybody's happy. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not a relationship. We're not like in tandem. We're not in concert. We're not working together. This is not a partnership like mentality. Like, and just the, a lot of the commercials that we see on TV. Oh God. Ugh. Yeah. Not helpful.
But when it comes to the mastermind of it all, the reason why Jennifer Magazine is important is because it's going to both uplift stories of success, but also make us empathize with like pitfalls and struggling. But the reason why Taylor Swift thinks that she's a mastermind, and the reason I believe that I don't actually have any friends, is because women have been conditioned to feel weird about their own success. Like, oh, me? Nuh-uh.
Yes. No. Do you remember years ago, Amy Schumer she had a show, and there was a sketch on the show that made me just like laugh so hard at the realness of it. And it was the scene in which she and all of her girlfriends are like outside, and they're all, in like this circle, and they're talking about like, oh, I love your shoes. And they're like, oh, these old things. And like another one was like, oh, I love your hair. And she's like, oh, I'm such a mess. And every single one was like giving a compliment, and then the other one was deflecting it until all of their heads exploded.
Yes. I love that sketch. And it just escalates because it's like, tell me about your new job. And it's like, oh, I'll probably be fired tomorrow. I'm useless. I'm a dumb asshole. Like,
I can't with that. I cannot with that because, I don't understand. I probably do understand the psychology of it, but I don't want to understand the psychology of it. But for me, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? Why are we doing this?
And what scares me is I understand why we do it when men are present, because I was like, yeah, because you can't outshine them. Then they get angry, and then the, repercussions roll in. But when we do it with one another, I'm like, no, this is why we gather without them, so we can let it go.
Yes. I want to hear like your celebration of yourself. Like you show up. That is freaking amazing, right? Like we are doing things. We are, I think for a long time, I didn't feel I fit in. I mean, I'm 47 years old and I'm only feeling like I'm coming into my own now. I felt like I had a hard time fitting in because I would look at this type of thing and it didn't feel genuine to me. So did I participate in it? Was I supposed to participate in it? And then it doesn't feel genuine. And then it's like, and then I just start to feel bad about myself. And then then I'm really feeling bad about myself. Not like, oh, this whole thing. Like I'm feeling like shit. And I'm like, why are we doing this to each other? So so when I am in groups of people, when when I check in with our contributors, I'm like, y'all are amazing. You all are doing the work. You all are showing up. Thank you for shining your light. Thank you for doing the hard work because it's not easy. It's not easy. Everything we have been taught, especially as women, especially if you have like an added, like you're bi, you're queer, you're neurodivergent, you're black, you're brown, it's even harder. The whole world wants you to hate yourself. And so, I think just by the fact of how hard it is to show up is freaking amazing. Celebrated.
It should be. And there's like a war against vulnerability and passion that I can't with currently, where it's like a lot of the time I have been told directly by people who are in creative spaces with me, you can't talk about your passion, creative project, and how you're going to change the world with other people who do not have a creative passion project, because so many people are turned off by other people's passions. And I'm like, well, that's sad. And what if I'm the biggest person who will just leech off of your passion and be like, I too want to try printmaking. I will carve up the erasers and we will do this together.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. Like, I'm like, tell me, like, what is, what's inside of you? Cause I love that. I want to bring that out and celebrate it because, what is life about? And I just think it does such a disservice to so many of us that we're trying to quell or dim the light of others because we feel insecure.
Well, and I think passion and artistic and creativity have become such scary words to people. Like, people are like, oh, I'm not creative at all. And it's like, well, didn't you just like hand make this blueberry pie and grow these like blueberries in your garden? And it's like, yeah, but do not have an artist bone in my body. And I'm like literally, like, this crust is crimped so prettily. I don't understand. And they just become so intense. There's so much pressure behind the words like creative, writer, artist, that people are like, oh, I'm not worthy for that label. Like, that's not me. That's Van Gogh.
So it's interesting because you're catching me after a long period of me going through that. So I'm kind of out on the other side now, and I still deal with those, sometimes the voices, like, who are you? When I get very tired at night, that is when the voices come for me. And I got a real mean girl inside me who's like, who do you think you are? You're, like, you can't do this. And why should you? And all of these types of voices. And I hear other women on these panels and everything talk about it, but it's so different when the call's coming from inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you see it on somebody else, you're like, yeah, well, you need to listen to that. But when the call's coming from inside the house, it's way more terrifying and way more like intense. But what do you think that is? Like, when people are like, oh, I'm not creative. Like, what is that?
I think a lot of it is, number one, a lot of us got shut down so early in our youth the first time that we were creative. Like, and I'm so worried that a lot of children are being raised by people who were not allowed to be creative. I'm such an asshole at family events. My cousin's kids were playing with Play-Doh, and one of the little girls was like, I want to do this as my job, and I will make earrings and bracelets and blah, blah, blah. And then someone had to go, it's great that you love to do this. It will never make you money. Make sure that you become a nurse or a teacher or something. And then I have to get out my phone, and I'm like, come here, come sit with me. Look at all of these TikTok accounts that I follow of all these people. Have you ever heard of Polymorph clay? I've bought some. And all these people are just making earrings and selling their stuff on TikTok of all places. And to be like, anything and everything that you want to do is worth doing.
There's something here that's so like deeply feminine too about creation. Like, all of us have the ability to create something, right? And life. And it could be, I'm not even saying having babies. I'm saying like taking care of a pet, or like taking care of your plants, like, like planting a garden. Like, we all have the ability to create things. And I don't know why we would disparage, except for understanding the power in that.
Yeah.
And so we can't have, like, that power is scary, I think, for some people. Because, like, if you create that, oh, what else could be created?
Well, and lovely capitalism, my second enemy, has taught us that if my little cousin gets to make earrings out of Play-Doh all damn day long and become a millionaire, and you sat in an office for your entire life hating it, but you got to pay all of your bills and also became a millionaire, all of a sudden the way that she did it wasn't correct, because she got to enjoy it and love it and be passionate about it, and she didn't earn it.
Ooh, you're hitting me in the heart feels right now. These are things that have been said to me, or at least intoned, or said. Apparently, I make a lot of people roll their eyes for a long time. That made me feel really, really shitty about myself, like really shitty, because I do have a big personality. I'm ambitious. I mean, like, I'm like, oh, I'm starting a media company, And I am a natural storyteller. I've done video production. I've done writing, so I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I mean, that's absurd. However, we only get one shot. We're only here for a pinprick in all of time. I don't want any of us to hold back. This is all we get. So create.
My big trigger question is, who's going to care about that, Natalie?
Oh, God, that hurts my heart.
And who's going to care about that? That can be a million things. That could be that you heard that I called my aunt on a Wednesday, just out of the blue, missed my aunt and gave her a call. And someone's like, why would your aunt care about you on a Wednesday? Like it's not Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything. You're just calling. And it's like, yeah, that woman loves me. And I call her when I need to feel loved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's such a moment, right? That's real connection. Like there's an exchange there of love, of like bringing something into the world that's like really beautiful, even if it's small. It's funny because when, the feedback when I was developing Jennifer, I kind of did it on my own for a while and also it had coincided with one of the worst couple years of my life. And I'm not even talking about like pandemic. I'm talking about just like everything. And so, and so I was testing it out slowly. I was doing interviews with women. We were doing, again, because even though I was the only one writing, I felt like it couldn't just be my voice. I've always had this real, I don't know. Again, maybe because I'm bored by my own thoughts. I'm like, I know them. I already know what my thoughts are. I've been described as like the biggest key descriptor of me is like curious. So, but, and then, I started testing the waters, expanding out, and I'm not a business person per se. So I was in this group to learn how to do business, to fund this because it does need to be funded. Like we expect women to work for free. We especially expect, further marginalized women to work for free. And I, am not here for it. So this is labor. But I remember like trying to get some feedback, and one of the pieces that I got was like, nobody's going to care. This isn't like, you're not hitting the middle. You're not solving a problem. That was what was told to me. You're not solving a problem. And so for me, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'm like, what do you mean? We don't have anything like this. This is we don't have independent media, and especially embedded with making sure that we are, not just one perspective. So to me, I like couldn't fathom it, but that really crushed me for a while. It really crushed me until I had another mentor who was a woman of color and was like, was that a white woman? I was like, yes. She's like, She's like, media's already built for her. This is not for her. So yeah, she's like, I would take that as a compliment. I was like, okay, I'll try.
I try to go to podcast networking and learning my craft more events when I try, and I get so frustrated because they're like, so how does your podcast lean itself to like a coaching business or like a physical product you can sell people? And I'm like, no, my podcast is the product. And the price of admission is joining me in the revolution. What am I supposed to be coaching people on? I can't get my friends to leave their useless boyfriends. What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah. And I think that that's the thing. When we're creating media, you're creating this media, right? And it is not, it is revolutionary. Like it is, it's disruptive. It's going to ruffle feathers, and that's what we need. But, there is a reason why most media is very status quo, because what is it? 6 people at the top, all male. I think 5 of them are white, all, I think all of them, well, definitely all of them are cis. And, I can't comment on their sexuality because I don't know, but, I have my suspicions. But when we start to see that, we start to understand that we need media for us too, right? We need media who are outside of that. So it's not as, in talking about capitalism, the feeding the beast, feeding the beast, feeding the beast. Don't disrupt anything. Don't challenge it because everybody's fine, air quote, But yeah, it's hard. I mean, what you're doing is hard. What I'm doing is hard, but it's also really necessary.
Hey, are you a woman out there or a non-binary person or a femme presenting human doing creativity? It's hard. It's hard. They made it hard for us. They decided that we had to climb mountains while everyone else got to jump over a puddle. And we talk about that in our writer strike episode about how people are so frustrated. Why is all of the TV the same and blah, blah, blah. And we're rebooting Frasier. Why? And I'm like, because 6 dudes in an office are like, how do we sell this to Oreos so that they advertise on our show? And can we get Frasier to eat an Oreo? Does anyone know? Like, and it's that no one asked Seinfeld, hey, what problem are you solving? In fact, Seinfeld was known for being a show about nothing.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. There is so much pressure on us, isn't there? Like, and especially as women are coming into more economic, impact, we're more, we're earning now, as recently as 1974, a woman couldn't own a credit card, right? Without a man. There were very few jobs, and very specific jobs. So that were low paying, and still we are experiencing the blowback from, raising kids or just being a woman, right?
When anyone wants to talk to me about this very nice football player who gets to be photographed with my goddess, Taylor Swift, I always ask them, I'm like, do you know how much money her movie made this weekend? And I'm like, don't talk to me about him. I'm sure he's very nice. Like, good for her. She's getting laid. I would rather talk about how that woman was told no by those 6 bros in the studios and was like, I want to make this movie and I want to make it where it's strike compliant and everyone gets paid and whatever she did. And they lowballed her. Like, she's not Taylor Allison Swift. And she went, fine, fuck you. I'll call AMC. That's what I want to talk about. How she opened a door for Beyonce to go, I'll call AMC. I have a phone. I have people who make phone calls on my behalf.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, exactly. And so that's what, it is harder. And so sometimes I get down on myself. I don't know if I'm sure you do. Get down. Why aren't I more successful? Why aren't I, because it's not made for us. And so we have to make our own way. That's hard. That's not easy. It's extra hard. So, I just got to give you kudos for, again, doing what you're doing, because I am so grateful, because you doing what you do allows me, it makes it easier for me to do what I do.
Well, and vice versa. To think about the rest of your life and being like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And my mission and your mission has been, I'm going to make the marginalized loud, because we've been told to be quiet. Another hot thing that's going on right now is Britney Spears is coming out with her book on Monday. Not anymore because it's February while you're listening, listener. But people watched Britney Spears be medically abused for a decade, if not more. And then when she finally got her dad out of her house, they went, why isn't she just baking cookies and reading a book and watching TV? Like, why is she spinning around on Instagram naked? And I'm like, because that girl never got to be naked. Let her do what she's doing. Also, she can't trust therapists because her dad hired her therapist, so she's been in toxic therapy. So if she wants to dance with knives and she doesn't hurt herself then good on Britney. But it's this idea that Amber Heard wasn't the perfect victim. This idea that perfection is what we strive for, but also it's what holds us back from actually telling our stories. And that's what they want too. They want us to be the don't worry darlings.
Let me tell you this. So when I was a parenting blogger, when I was a mom, people really responded to me. Now that I am stepped out, my kids are grown. This is me. It's been interesting to see how much harder it is to just be a woman in the world and not a mother. So for me, I'm like, I project all of the things, like all of the Susie Homemaker, whatever, and I think that's why a lot of people were attracted to me, even in my community at first. I would get invited to all these things and like everybody wanted to be, they're like, oh, she's cool. And so they'd want me until I was like, wait, so the pools that you all belong to have this really racist history and of segregation, and you're still swimming in the pool, even though they have it now, like they can't overtly segregate. It's through this subversive or this quiet, like, oh, we only nominate people. You can only go to this pool if you're nominated, which is still the white supremacy. And then I stopped getting invited to wine and cheese parties.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was not fun. I mean, I don't know.
My version of that is people always think that I'm doing a bit. So it's really funny when I tell you that like your boyfriend belongs on Dateline, until the next time I see him doing something weird and abusive, I start like naming statistics and like actual court cases. And then they're like, is this not just your Netflix special? And it's like, nah, I'm just trying to keep you alive. And then it's like, well, we can't invite Natalie over. She keeps telling us that our boyfriends are dangerous. And it's like, well,
yeah,
because statistics. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is tough because you feel compelled. Like when you see something, you're like, again, I think I already said it once in this conversation, but like kind of, I have this thing where I didn't even realize I said it all the time, but my husband pointed out because he's like, so insightful. What, but it's like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this? Why? Like, why do we keep doing these things? So yeah, when you ask those questions, it can be hard.
It can. But we are rounding up to our hour. So I want to move us to our closing ceremony, like we're the Olympics. And except for I hate the Olympics. And
no, you do.
I do. Because it usually takes away all of the TV that I care about.
Oh.
And it's just another platform for like a lot of women to not get paid and get abused. So,
yeah. Oh God, that is true.
The moment that someone clued me in that your biggest hope for being an Olympian who actually makes a living out of being an Olympian is to actually be an influencer, I was like, but that's also the expectation for the Bachelor contestants. Like, and I'm not saying that anyone's better than anyone else, but that person did 18 flip-a-flips on ice. Like,
one of them has been training since they were 3 years old.
Right. And
7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And then the other one,
some of the contestants on The Bachelor have also been training since they were 3 years old to be a woman in a dress handed a rose. But it's different.
Sure.
It's different. But that was when I was done with the Olympics. I was like, what do you mean they're not paying them? They had to go all the way to Japan. What do you mean? But we close every episode with our lasting impression. If you had to pick one thing that you would repeat forever and for always as, this is what I want you to get out of my story and Jennifer magazine, what would your lasting impression be?
Well, the lasting impression is really, it's not even something that we said, it's something that we did right here today. And that is collaborating, working together, not necessarily competing with one another, having these conversations and Yeah, really not doing it on your own, like ditching that whole idea that you are this one person that has to climb up this hill when really, we're there together.
Yeah. And I think my lasting impression from this point in my life is let's get messy. I feel like I'm always begging people to be like, what if we were just a wreck and that was fine? But also get messy. I would sing the song from the Waitress musical, but it makes me cry. So I won't sing the song about being messy but kind, imperfect, but you try. I'm not going to sing it. Listen to Sarah Bareilles sing it on your own time. But yeah, contain multitudes and then own that you have multitudes. This idea that we're just a singular entity, that we are mom, that we are teacher, that we are lady who makes cookies. Like, contain your multitudes and then shout them.
Absolutely. That's one way to disrupt the capitalistic patriarchy.
Yeah.
You can't contain us.
Yeah. Make your resume really weird. Nothing panics me more when people go, oh, you're a writer? What do you write? And I'm like, yesterday it was poetry. A year ago, it was children's books. And tomorrow it's going to be a SNL skit. So I write and I contain multitudes. And then our second tradition is our manifestation. So we offer up a hope to the general collective and the energy about what we want to see in the nearby future.
This is so big. Things feel very weighty right now. I know it's February, but I guess, especially around like that whole idea of love and Valentine's Day and all of that, which, just everything feels weighty. I think I loved what you said about being messy. And I think what I would love to see in the world is allowing other people to be messy too and not holding them up to the standards of perfection. Allowing them, giving them space to try to figure things out and to be messy.
Yeah. And I think my manifestation, because now I'm hooked on this idea that I shouldn't be calling my aunt when I want to, is I hope that at least once a week, I hope that everyone is celebrated every day, because I do believe that like people who are doing work like this, who are choosing to listen to this podcast, who support you and I, they deserve to be celebrated every day, unless something weird has happened in the algorithm and you hate listening to me. But I hope at least once a week it's someone else who's celebrating you. I hope it's your favorite aunt texting you that they loved the outfit you wore to church. I hope that it's, one time I had an uncle tell me, when your dad was really worried about you wanting to make podcasting into a career, I allowed him to be worried about it. But then when he was done, I said, well, Nataly's always been a good storyteller, and all of my favorite memories involve Nataly telling stories. Oh. So if anyone's going to do it, it'll be her. And I was in public at a gaming convention, so I could not cry. I mean, I probably could have. No one would have. If I sat down on the floor of Gen Con and cried, no one would have looked at me. But yeah, I hope at least once a week, someone in your life who actually knows you takes a moment to celebrate you.
And I want you to, can I add on to that?
Yes.
And I hope that you are able to just enjoy that and not deflect it and not feel like you have to say anything else. Just take the gift.
Yeah. On Dimension 20, they did a all femme season based off of a different season. So the people who were playing D&D were playing 7 femme characters, and because it was a femme dominant table, and that's rare for D&D, every time someone was given a compliment and they'd go to deflect it, someone would also go, no, you just roll in it. Roll in the compliment, roll in the love that we have for you. So now whenever I feel like I don't want to have my compliment. I'll just be like, no, Becca Scott and Abria Iyengar would remind me that I deserve this compliment and I deserve to roll in it. I'm going to roll in the fact that I am loved because I am lovable.
Well, and that's true.
Thank you. It's true for you too. Make sure that everyone gets a chance to hear you say where they can connect with you and Jennifer Magazine. Do your plugs.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. If you're listening to Natalie, you're going to love Jennifer Magazine because it has all of these voices. And also, it's women's independent media. So, we are driven by the people who support us. We're not, a corporation. So follow us on Instagram at Jennifer_magazine. Read us at jennifermag.com. Buy an issue, join our membership, where you get to practice, rolling in the love. And so, join us. I would love to have you.
A plug that I have on my outline and meant to bring up earlier. One of those voices is our very own Julia Washington from Still Comfy.
Yes.
Millions of episodes on this show, and I've done millions of episodes on Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. So we love what Julia writes and produces. So we have a family member on the magazine.
Yes. I mean, that's the type of perspective, quality, conscientiousness, love that you're going to get.
Yes. And my only plug for my independently owned female bit of media is that we do have a Patreon. That's the best way to support us monthly. And there is a free trial. So you could even binge all of the bonus episodes in a week and then not actually give me money. And I'd still be happy that you heard from all of our friends.
No, they should know. I mean, capitalism sucks, but we should definitely be supporting each other.
And all of the information for Jennifer and I are in the show notes, and there are links because I've figured out how to hyperlink things. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the team.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me on. I really just deeply appreciate it because, again, we're going to do this. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
That's the only way this is going to work.
Loudly. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including stories that were written by men for men because society has decided that men are the only people who matter. Smiles are for joy.